My wife lied in court during our divorce, so I brought her ex to testify and won full custody with one. Sentence: I'm a 33-year-old guy, and I used to believe marriage meant we were on the same team. 7 years, one 5-year-old boy who still says wello instead of yellow, a modest house with a leaky porch light tie, held the late shifts to keep the mortgage paid while Claire finished her degree. I told myself tired marriages creak. That creaking was normal. Double quotes. Hey, can you grab him from daycare today? I'd ask, keys biting my palm as I headed out. I have group study with Derek, she'd say, eyes skimming her screen. Don't be dramatic. Most nights ended with the blue glow of her phone pooling over our sheets. The mattress felt colder, like a narrow raft with two people pretending not to notice the waves. I'd roll toward her, smell the citrus of her shampoo, and stop an inch short. Everything good? I'd try. Not everything has to be a conversation, she'd reply, thumb still moving. Go to sleep. My father was a jealous man. He used suspicion like a hammer and shattered everything. I swore I'd never be him. So I stacked quiet explanations like sandbags, finals week, internship stress, a study partner who just happened to stay late. When the phone buzzed after midnight and she flipped it face down, I swallowed the question and blamed the caffeine from my after-work coffee, the hum of the fridge, the way small fears echo in small houses. On Saturdays, I made pancakes while our son lined up toy cars along the grout lines. Mommy's studying, I'd say. We're giving her space. Like space in outer space? He'd ask. Exactly, I'd answer, tasting batter on my knuckle, telling myself space was temporary. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday, the kind of thin winter afternoon that tastes like metal. A process server stood on the steps, breath fogging the glass. Are you my name? He asked. Already reaching into his SATCHEL, Claire appeared behind me, hair neat, backpack straps snug. Just sign, she said softly, not meeting my eyes. Divorce papers. And tucked behind them, the motion for emergency temporary custody, her affidavit calling me emotionally unstable. The porch light flickered. My son's cars went silent. I didn't know it yet, but that was the first lie the court would hear. This won't be a big deal, my attorney said on the phone that morning. We'll set a temporary schedule and come back for a longer hearing. I wore the only suit I own, the one that smells faintly like dry cleaner starch, and practiced breathing in the car until my palms stopped sweating. The courthouse corridors were two bright fluorescents, buzzing like a beehive, floors reflecting people who all looked like they wished they were somewhere else. Claire sat at the far end of the bench with her mother. She didn't look at me. When the clerk called our case, she stood quickly, papers neat, shoulders squared like she'd been rehearsing. Your Honor, her lawyer began, we're seeking emergency temporary custody due to Dad's volatility. The words landed heavy, like dropped weights. Then Claire raised her right hand, voice steady. He screamed at our son. He threw a chair into the wall. Our neighbor heard everything. I felt my face go hot. That didn't I started, and my attorney touched my sleeve. Let it come, he whispered. Do you have evidence? The judge asked. Claire's counsel slid a stapled declaration across neighbor statement on letterhead. A neat paragraph, the kind of paragraph where every sentence was a nail. My attorney objected to hearsay. Opposing counsel called it corroboration. The judge frowned, skimmed, and looked at me over his glasses. Sir, do you dispute the incident? Yes, I said, throat dry. Completely. Claire blinked hard, like summoning tears from a place just under the skin. I'm scared, Your Honor, she whispered. Her mother dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. The courtroom smelled like paper and cologne and someone's mint gum. My attorney tried to pivot to employment stability. The photos of bedtime routines on my phone, but the judge lifted a hand. Given the allegations, I'm granting temporary primary to mother. Father's visitation will be supervised pending review. The words blurred into a single tone, supervised, like I was a stranger renting hours with my own child. The bailiff handed me a printed schedule that crackled in my hand, thin as onion skin. Claire exhaled a small, satisfied sound she almost swallowed in the hallway. My attorney leaned close. We need to break this. Fast dates, receipts, anything. And there's a detail in her timeline that doesn't add up. He tapped the paper. Look at the date. I stared at the line he indicated, and something cold slid into place. I sat in my car after court, forehead on the steering wheel, reading that date until the numbers looked like ants. The chair incident supposedly happened on a Wednesday, I remember, down to the burnt coffee. Was at my mom's fixing her router until 10:14 p.m., the neighbor's statement said. She heard shouting at 9:30. My call log said I was on speaker with my mom, swearing at a blinking modem. Truth felt small compared to paperwork dressed as truth. At home, the air tasted like dust. I started a folder on my laptop, receipts, screenshots of daycare pickups, bank pings, timestamps of bedtime photos. I opened notes and titled one file incidents, then froze. Don't fight fire with fire, my attorney had said. Document. Don't dramatize. Claire posted a black square on Facebook with the words, "Survivors know." Her sister commented, "So proud of you," and 3 coworkers left hearts. My phone buzzed with a message from an old friend. "Bro, what happened?" I typed, deleted, typed again. "We're in court," I finally wrote. "I won't talk about it online." During my first supervised visit, the room smelled like crayons and lemon cleaner. My son held a stuffed dinosaur by the neck and watched the supervisor's clipboard like it might bite. "Hey, bud," I said, kneeling, so my knees popped. "Want to build a garage for your cars?" "Mommy says you get mad," he murmured, eyes down. "When?" I asked, gently. "When you're loud," he said, louder than a whisper, softer than himself. Therapy was a fluorescent office with a clock that ticked too loudly. "You're doing the right thing," Dr. Ames said, hands folded. "Keep living your routine, stabilize your environment, and how do I protect him from what he's hearing?" "You can't control her mouth," she said, not unkindly. "You can model calm, and you can create a paper trail of calm." I bought 2 small cameras, set them in the living room and by the front door, a sign taped above the switch. Audio, video recording, in progress. The hum of the house felt different, like a witness had moved in. I started logging missed handoffs, delayed replies, verbatim quotes from our son. Dr. Ames flipped through my notes, brow tightening this language. "Daddy needs help. Daddy breaks things. It's sophisticated for a 5-year-old, she said. It reads like coaching. Parental alienation, potentially. I looked at the date on the neighbor letter again. The same number surfaced somewhere else. I didn't expect on a document Claire never meant me to see. The next morning, I turned my kitchen table into an evidence lab laptop warm under my wrists. Printer coughing out pages, the sour-sweet smell of toner in the air. I laid everything in rows like train tracks, bank statements, daycare, timestamps, photos, the supervised visit, logs. Truth needed a backbone, not feelings. I called my mom on speaker. That Wednesday I said, "The night of the chair. You fixed the router." "Then ate leftover stew," she answered, spoon clinking. "You left at 10:15. I texted you a photo of the cat sitting on your hood at 10:16. Asterisk, I scrolled, found it cat reflection of her porch light, the timestamp. I dragged it into my folder and exhaled through my teeth, like it might cool my anger. My attorney, Mason, picked up on the second ring. "Dates, places, corroboration," he said before. "Hello." I gave him the mom call, the photo, the DoorDash receipt, for 2 soups at 9:41 p.m., 2 miles away from my house. "Good," he said. "Now the neighbor letter. Who is she exactly?" "Name's on the signature," I said, zooming in. I ran it through LinkedIn, then through Claire's following list. The headshot popped up, same curls, same smile listed as Administrative Assistant Behavioral Health Clinic. Her neighbor works with Claire's internship supervisor. Not illegal. Not honest. "Technically a neighbor if she lives 2 buildings down," Mason muttered. "But the conflict is obvious. We highlight bias, not accuse conspiracy." I printed the declaration and noticed something I'd missed, the signature date in the corner. 2 days before the alleged chair night, the paper felt slick under my thumb. "Mason," I said, throat tight. "She signed this before it supposedly happened." "Get me a clean scan," he said, voice sharpening, "and pull your phone records for that week. If your device pings towers near your mom's at those times, we can impeach credibility." I ordered call logs, pulled location history, and wrote a timeline in black marker across a manila folder. The apartment Humfrich printer, my heart. Between the lines of her affidavit, I saw a rhythm. Phrases that didn't sound like Claire too polished, almost scripted, and in my head, a name I'd only ever seen typed with careful spacing. never spoken out loud, Aiden. The name tasted like a secret I'd been swallowing for years. Claire never said it. She typed it, careful and spaced, like smuggling contraband through a metal detector. I opened my old cloud backups, the ones that hum like a distant freeway when they load, and typed 4 letters into the search bar. A D in files, Bloom screenshots, chat exports, a folder I didn't remember creating. My fingers felt chalky on the trackpad. I clicked a thread with Claire's college friend, Bree. "Can you get Aiden to sanity check my notes?" Claire wrote. "Girl, he'll do anything if you say it's for the kid," Bree replied. "Claire, exactly. People listen when it's protecting the child." I leaned back, the chair ticking in tiny clicks. My pulse climbed into my ears. I scrolled more messages, the tone sharp, efficient. "Bree, don't overdo it. Judges want patterns." "Claire, I know." He said, "Consistency greater than truth. Dates just have to feel natural." The room smelled like stale coffee and printer heat. I pulled open my banking app, fingers clumsy and filtered by payees. Venmo entries surfaced like oil slicks, utilities, gas, banks, each for $40 AD, clustered suspiciously around filings and hearings. The usernames were Koimoji's half-names, but one handle repeated with the same avatar I'd seen in the old photos she swore she'd deleted. Aiden, older now, same hard smile. I called Mason. "I think she's coordinating with an ex," I said, keeping my voice low even though I was alone. "There are payments, coaching." "Don't say coaching," he said. "Say advice until we verify. Export everything. Metadata matters. And don't contact him yet if he's connected. He's a witness, not your pen pal." I exported the chat archives, the zip bar crawling like a slow heartbeat. I could feel the apartment's thin walls, the radiator's dry breath, the prickle on my neck that comes when the truth starts shaping itself into something usable. I opened photos and searched Ugnaday, finding a selfie of Claire, outside a coffee shop with a caption from 2 winters ago. Closure. His reflection hovered in the window behind her, almost invisible unless you cared to look. I stared at his outline, a ghost in glass, and realized ghosts can testify if you make them real. I knew the next step, and I knew it could blow everything open or blow up in my face. I spent the night in the blue aquarium light of my laptop, eyes grainy, tongue feeling like paper. Cloud drives, recycle bins, forgotten folders, the digital attic where people stash what they don't want to remember but can't risk deleting. In Claire's shared internship folder buried under 3 layers of admin logs. Personal, I found a PDF titled Incident Journal. Neat. Columns, dates, times, feelings, and yet the metadata pulsed at the bottom like a siren. Multiple entries created within the same 90-minute window 3 days after she served me, not on the nights they supposedly happened. My heart thumped against the desk edge. I opened another file, How to Document Abuse for Court.pdf, a parenting blog with highlighted sections. Use concrete objects, for example. Chair and patterns persuade. The exact phrases she used in her affidavit were glowing neon in someone else's words. Put 'em on speaker. Let the document's sheen reflect on the ceiling. Found the journal, I said, created in a batch, and she's got a guide that reads like a script. Don't editorialize, he said, but I heard the shift in his voice. Send me the originals. Screenshots of properties, hash them if you can. Chain of custody starts now. I dug deeper. In a drafts folder, dusty with old cover letters and grocery lists, sat an unsent email to a contact named Aseptic. Does this sound credible? My scalp prickled. I clicked. Claire had pasted bullet points. He raised voice near dishes. Use Wednesday BC neighbor home. Mention chair, but keep it vague. At the bottom, a line. Judges care about patterns greater than truth. Right. A blinking cursor hovered like it was waiting for a confession. I recorded my screen. Captured timestamps my own breath, loud in the mic. The apartment smelled hot, like the laptop's fan was blowing toasted dust. I texted Mason the file names. He replied in seconds. If we authenticate the draft and link A to Aiden, we're not talking he said, she said anymore. We're talking perjury and custody modification. I stared at the word credible until it fractured. The cursor kept blinking, patient as a metronome. I knew the next page I needed to open and too. I needed to drag into the light to read it aloud. Mason's voice came clipped and caffeinated over speaker. We don't wave this in her face. We set the board. Motion to compel devices. Subpoena the internship. Notice her deposition. Slow, surgical. I pictured a scalpel, not a hammer. What about Aiden? I asked, the name small and sharp in my mouth. Not yet, he said. First, we authenticate the drafts. Then we make him choose between perjury and self-preservation. The courthouse copy center smelled like hot plastic and toner. I fed in pages until my fingers were dusty gray. Properties, screenshots, hash values, the draft email with the pulsing subject line, every sheet slid out warm, curling at the edges like they wanted to hide. At home, I stacked them into a blue accordion folder labeled with a black marker. I could smell from 2 feet away. Case: Claire's lawyer scheduled her depot for Friday. The conference room was all glass and air conditioning that hummed in my molars. She arrived in a camel coat, clean ponytail, hands tucked in the sleeves like a schoolgirl. When the court reporter swore her in, the pen's scratch sounded violent. Describe the chair incident, Mason said evenly. She repeated it like a bedtime story, same cadence as her affidavit. I watched her eyes, not her mouth. When Mason slid the metadata printouts across, her nostrils flared. These are technicalities, she said, voice lighter. Like she could float over the paper. Dates, Mason said, tapping the bottom corner. You created 5 entries in 90 minutes. After you filed, I updated my journal, she said. Updated? He echoed. The reporter's keys ticked like rain. We didn't mention Aiden, not yet. After, in the hallway that smelled like citrus cleaner, Mason leaned in. She doubled down. Good judges remember momentum. That night, I texted a mutual from Claire's college, Deza friend, whose name sat beside the worst messages. I need to reach Aiden, I wrote. No threats, no deals, just facts. He's already in this, whether he knows it or not. She called instead. Her voice was a match struck in darkness. He's skittish, says he's out. But he asked me one question. What question? If anyone can prove the draft was his idea. My phone buzzed again, a number I didn't recognize. A single message lit the screen. If I talk, I want protection. Call me tomorrow. The visitation room smelled like crayons and lemon cleaner, the kind of bright that makes your eyes water. Plastic bins of toys, laminated rules on the wall. A supervisor in a cardigan with a clipboard that clicked every time she wrote. My son stood by the window, dinosaur clamped in his fist like a handle. Hey, buddy, I said, crouching until my knees cracked. Garage for your cars? He nodded without looking up. The fluorescent lights hummed. I tried to slow my breathing so he'd match it. Mommy says you break things, he whispered, still facing the glass. I swallowed. Do you think I break things? He shrugged, the dinosaur's tail tapping the pane. When you're loud, I don't want to be loud with you, I said. I want to be safe with you. The supervisor's pen made a careful note. I felt my chest cave in by quiet degrees. We built a lopsided garage. He flinched when a block slipped and clacked. The sound ricocheted like a slammed door. It's okay, I said quickly, palms up like I could catch the fear mid-air after. In the hallway, the carpet smelled like industrial soap. Child displayed discomfort at raised voice. The supervisor murmured, handing me a copy. Raised voice mine or the block? The phrase pulsed behind my eyes. Asterisk, I drove home with the radio off, and my hands at 10 and 2. My apartment felt airless, the radiator ticking like a metronome of mistakes. I punched a pillow once, then twice, then stopped. Horrified at the shape of that moment, if someone wrote it down, my phone vibrated. A post from Claire, a photo of a dented wall, captioned, "Some people never change." It's timestamp, 15 minutes after our visit. My stomach folded. Comments bloomed like mold. I screen-capped everything. I called Mason. If she files for a restraining order, she might, he said. Do not respond publicly. Get redundant alibis. Move in with someone who can swear to your whereabouts. And consider a body cam for exchanges. The word cam tasted metallic. You serious? Yes, you're in the phase where truth needs witnesses. That night, I packed a duffel, drove to my brother's spare room that smelled like laundry detergent and dog. I ordered a small body camera, watched the tracking number crawl. At the next exchange, That lens would be the only pair of eyes I trusted, and the doorbell camera was already blinking when I stepped onto the porch. Mason's office always smells like old books and burnt coffee. A steadying smell. We sat beneath a buzzing vent while he typed the keys, snapping like small bones. "We make a proffer," he said. "If Aden tells the truth about any coaching or fabricated journals, we won't pursue sanctions against him. Not immunity, just a clear off-ramp. Will a guy like that take it?" I asked, palms damp against the legal pad. "He'll take whatever keeps him out of perjury," Mason said, eyes not leaving the screen. "But we need leverage before we call." We organized the exhibits on the conference table until it looked like a crime scene. The metadata sheets, the incident journal, the parenting blog with her highlighted phrases, the DoorDash receipt, my mom's cat photo with the timestamp, and the draft email to a BHI added printouts of the Venmo payments that clustered like storm. Cells around court dates dot the intermediary. Claire's college friend patched us into a call with Aden. His voice came thin and wary through the speaker. "I'm not involved," he began. Mason didn't blink. "We have a draft," Claire wrote to someone labeled A, asking if her story sounds credible. "We have payments. We have a coworker neighbor's letter dated before the alleged incident. If we subpoena you, you'll have to answer under oath." Silence. I could hear the faint click of his jaw through the line. "I didn't write anything," he said, softer. "She asked me how to present things. Judges care about patterns. Everyone knows that." "How to present?" Mason repeated. "Did you suggest dates?" Aden exhaled. "She sent bullet points. Told her Wednesdays were better because the neighbor is home." "I didn't think you thought enough to take money labeled utilities," Mason said, sliding the printouts toward me, though Aden couldn't see them. "Here's our offer. You testify truthfully about Claire's planning, the journal timing, and the neighbor letter's origin. We won't move to sanction you." The vent rattled. I stared at a coffee ring spreading like a tide across the table. Aden cleared his throat. "If I talk, I want it on the record that I didn't make anything up. Subpoena me so it isn't voluntary." "Done," Mason said. "We'll see you at the hearing." When the call ended, the room felt colder. Mason stacked the exhibits, his sleeves whispering against paper. "Next," he said, "we break her story piece by piece in front of a judge." The subpoena printer warmed to life. And for the first time, I wanted the day in court to come faster than I could breathe. The courtroom felt colder than last time recycled air, varnish and someone's aftershave sitting stale under the fluorescent hum. I smoothed my tie and tried to quiet the tremor behind my ribs. Mason leaned in. "Breathe from your stomach," he whispered, "and watch the judge's pen. When it stops, we're landing hits." Claire went first, right hand raised, voice soft enough to make you lean forward. "He screamed at our son," she said, eyes glistening. "He threw a chair. Our neighbor heard. Her lawyer fed her questions like grapes, and she caught each one without chewing." I gripped the table edge. In my head, pancakes, toy cars, the tiny scrape my son makes when he's concentrating. I focused on that instead of the way Claire dabbed at her eyes with a tissue already damp before the first tear. Mason stood, tone measured. "Ms. Claire, this is your incident journal." He held up the binder like it might bruise. "Yes," she said. "I updated it as things happened." He slid a printout to the clerk. "Metadata shows 5 entries were created within 90 minutes 3 days after you filed." Claire blinked. "I consolidated notes." "Consolidated," Mason repeated, letting the word flatten on his tongue. He introduced the parenting blog, the one with the highlighted phrases that matched her affidavit. "Did you write these words before or after reading this guide?" he asked. "I don't remember," she said, eyes skittering to her counsel. "Do you remember this receipt?" He projected the DoorDash order, time-stamped during the alleged chair incident. And my mom's cat photo followed 10:16 p.m., my reflection in the windshield. The judge's pen paused. Then the neighbor hand's twisting voice brittle. "She asked me to put it on letterhead," the woman said, shrinking. I signed when she said it would help the judge understand. 2 days before the alleged event?" Mason asked. The neighbor stared at her shoes. "I guess so." A murmur rippled. The judge tapped the bench once. "Order." Mason didn't look at me when he called the next witness. We'd like to call Aden, last name, to the stand. A door at the back opened, and a figure stepped in, jaw tight, eyes scanning everywhere but Claire. She turned toward me, color draining, lips parting like a hinge that suddenly forgot how to close. Aiden took the stand like a man walking, across thin eye shoulders tight, eyes fixed on a middle distance only he could see. The courtroom smelled like varnish and something metallic, the kind of dryness that coats your tongue. I could hear the tick of the clock above the door, every second sandpapering my nerves. Mason kept his voice level. State your name and relationship to Claire. Aiden last name. We dated years ago, he said, throat-catching. Did Claire contact you about how to present incidents for this case? Udin's jaw worked. She asked me to look over some notes. To make sure they sounded, his eyes slid to Claire. Credible. Did you suggest dates or details? He swallowed. I told her Wednesdays were good. The neighbor's usually home. I said judges look for patterns. She sent bullet points. I said keep it consistent and not too specific. The words fell like nails into wood. Claire's lawyer rose. Objection speculation overruled, the judge said, pen hovering. Mason set the draft email on the ledge. Is this the draft she sent you? Aiden nodded once, a small surrender. Yes, my chest felt tight, like my ribs were a belt pulled one notch too far. The gallery was so quiet you could hear people swallow. The judge turned to me. Mr. Last Name, you may testify briefly. I stood. The mic smelled faintly of dust. My voice surprised me steady, not loud. Mason asked one question. What do you want the court to know about your son? I looked at the judge, not at Claire. He is safest with the parent who doesn't need to lie to keep him. Silence. It stretched, clean, and bright, like air after thunder. The judge's pen stopped. Claire blinked hard, color flooding and draining from her face like a faulty light. Counsel, approach, the judge said finally, voice flat as slate. There was a hushed conference paper shuffling low murmurs. The bailiff shifting his weight then, the judge looked out over the room. We're taking a recess. When we return, be prepared to address custodial modification and potential referrals. My knees went weak with something that wasn't triumph so much as oxygen. I glanced at the empty witness chair where Aiden had sat, then at the door where my son would never walk in. The judge stood, robe whispering, and the gavel's soft tap felt like a starting gun. When the judge returned, the room felt newly carved edges sharper, air thinner, like someone had opened a window in winter. I stared at the grain of the counsel table and tried to slow my pulse. My palms smelled like paper and sanitizer. Claire fixed her gaze on the flag, jaw clenched as if holding back a hurricane of words. Having reviewed the testimony and exhibits, the judge said, voice steady as a level, the court finds willful fabrication and attempts to mislead. My throat clicked. Primary physical custody is awarded to father. Mother's decision-making is suspended pending psychological evaluation. Mother's time will be supervised until further order. Claire's chair scraped. Your Honor, I asterisk Ms. Last Name, the judge warned, pen hovering. There will also be referrals regarding potential perjury and witness tampering. The gavel's soft knock sounded like a lid sealing on a jar. Outside, the corridor smelled like varnish and cold air leaking through the revolving doors. Mason squeezed my shoulder. You did it, he said, voice soft, like the first breath after diving. I shook my head once. We protected him, I answered. My legs felt hollow and buoyant at the same time. Claire approached, eyes glad. I didn't mean, she began, voice fraying. Enough, I said. Not cruel, not kind. No more stories in front of him. That night, in my brother's spare room, I folded tiny t-shirts into a drawer that used to hold old band merch. The radiator hissed a steady lullaby. I set out a toothbrush with a blue dinosaur on the handle, lined up for toy cars on the windowsill, and taped our new custody schedule to the fridge like a calendar in a new country. When I called my son, he whispered, Can we make pancakes tomorrow? Yeah, buddy, I said, smiling into the dark. Extra syrup. In the weeks that followed, I learned the sound of a house rewarming, kettle whistle, cartoon theme songs, the soft thud of small feet. At exchanges, my body cam blinked, a quiet metronome of caution. Use your words, not your whispers, I told myself. Every time I wanted to rage, people on the internet will argue about heroes and villains. Courts write in ink, not comments. I tucked the ruling into a fireproof box. along with the photo of my mom's cat and the receipt that proved a lie could be dated tomorrow. I'll flip pancakes while a boy says wello, and the porch light will hold steady. But tonight, in the hush between victories and habits, I listen for the smallest sound, the click of a door that finally closes and stays closed.